All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Johnanna Gans. I am Rakhma's training manager. I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you're able to join us tonight, and if you are listening to the audio recording later, I want to welcome you to. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be able to connect with us here at Rakhma as we try to provide you some services as a family or a loved one of our residents. So moving forward, we will be building towards more regular family resident council meetings and training components for all of you. That's something that we here at Rakhma really want to reach out and start doing more frequently. And so know that this is coming. This is our first one. So excited you're here for the inaugural one. So again, we can't thank you enough for being here. As a quick reminder for those who have joined us, please keep your audio muted at all times. And then you can use the chat function if you wish to send me a question or connect. And you do not have to have your video on unless you wish to have your video on. So with that, let's get going. So this today is dementia-friendly communication and memory-enhanced activities. So we know that one of the many struggles that families and loved ones have is how to best connect with their loved one who is living with dementia. So this webinar is designed to give you a few tools, some frameworks and suggestions to help make the most of your time and your connections with your beloved resident. So it's important to understand that this is a general overview and it is not specific medical advice. So if you are looking for very specific medical advice, please contact your doctors or a trusted practitioner. This is, again, just some tools and tricks to help you. It's very similar to the material that we teach our staff. And so with that, please connect again with appropriate medical professionals. You can also connect with us here at Rakhma. So we have our site directors, we have the RNs, we have a director of operations, as well as our executive director. We're all here to be supportive to you as family and loved ones. So let's get going. First, I'll introduce myself for just a moment so you know who you're talking to. So my name is Johnanna Gans, if we've already established. As Marcia sent out in the communication, I am Dr. Johnanna Gans, but I am not a medical doctor. Oh, I see I already have a question. I'll turn on my video just for this introduction portion so you can all see. I do have my picture up, but hopefully you can see me now. Let's make sure that the video looks okay. There we go. Yeah, you can see me. Hi, everyone. I see y'all have your videos on. Again, you don't have to if you don't want to. But it's such a pleasure to see all of you. So I'll just have my video on for this part because otherwise you're going to watch me doing a lot of just staring at my screen, which probably isn't very exciting for any of you. So again, feel free to drop your video too if you don't want to keep it up. So I am Rakhma's training manager. I joined the Rakhma team in December of 2019, so it was December 2nd. So coming up on my 6-month mark, and I'm so excited. I have a background in training technical assistance and program and project management. So I truly love training people. I love educating people. I love learning from the people I'm educating. I love everything about connecting and sharing information. And so when I pitched to Brandon that I really wanted to do some more outreach and education with our family and loved ones, he was really excited. And I was just thrilled for the opportunity to be able to share more information and also learn from your experiences. So my contact information is listed right there. It's also going to be on the handouts that I send out after this webinar. So if you ever want to chat with me about what I know as the training manager, I am happy to talk about that. If you ever want to just talk about adult education, I'm also thrilled to talk about the science of andragogy. So I'm going to go ahead and take my video off until the end when we do question and answer, because again, otherwise you're just going to watch me staring at a screen. So again, you don't have to keep your video. We'll see you at the end. All right, let's start digging into the content. So that's a quick background around me. So what you can expect by attending this today is first and foremost, we're going to take some time and we're going to review the impacts of dementia on communication with specific strategies on how you can have better communication with someone experiencing dementia. We are going to define and apply the concepts of what it means to be memory enhanced, as well as using dementia friendly principles. By the end, you will have a better understanding of the connections between the 4 engagement needs and quality of life experience. So, spoiler alert, I'll tell you already that there are 4 different types of engagement needs that every person has. So, we'll talk about what those are. And then finally, through all of this, we're going to spend some time at the end with a Q&A, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what does that mean for your loved one, and what does that mean for activities, because activities are always one of those things that we want to do a lot with the people that we care about, but really keeping in mind what is appropriate, what works really well, and what ultimately creates more joy for our person. And that takes us right into my first question. So you can go ahead and use the chat function. If you need instructions on how to do that, you can scroll on up to your participant controls and you can hit a dot, 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 gives you a chat option. I've also sent a couple chats out, so it'll blink orange at you. So I want to give you just the opportunity to send me a couple of chats and answer the question, what brings you joy? So I'm going to drop quiet for just a second here and let people take a moment to answer. What brings you joy? And while people go ahead and add stuff, I'll just keep a little bit of information flowing. For me, I absolutely love reading. So I really love reading fiction. I really love science fiction in particular. I really love long distance running. I'm currently training for a virtual 5K, which I've never done anything like a virtual running race, but thanks to COVID-19, I'm learning new skills even as I've been a long distance runner for a couple 7, 8 years now. So I also really love learning new skills like I talked about and educating, and I really, really love puzzles. Perfect. Me chatting gave you all enough time to give some feedback. So I see Gordon really loves singing. It looks like talking with friends and family, performing music, visiting mom and getting some reaction from her. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing what brings you joy. I think that's such an important place just to start. So hello to the aunties, Connie and Pam, seeing your family. Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. These are all things that bring people joy. And as humans, we really look for activities and things that orient our day, pass the time, and allow us to connect to feelings and memories, particularly joyful feelings and memories. And so this question really is our driving force for this entire webinar. When we're thinking about memory enhanced and dementia friendly activities for every single resident with whom we have the pleasure of working, as well as everybody else that we connect with on a day to day. So when we work with and care for people with dementia, when we have folks with dementia in our lives, we really want to ask ourselves on a deep level, what brings this person joy, happiness, and purpose? What brings our entire houses of residents, of all the 4 houses we have, what brings that entire house joy, happiness, and purpose to each and every single day? When we start to know that information really well, we can use the basic principles of design and create the kinds of activities that really do bring joy. So with that, let's get cracking into talking about communication foundations. Because in order to talk about what brings us joy, in order to talk about how we get to those activities, I really want to make sure you all have some real basic concepts and best practices when engaging in communication, because it always starts with communication. I always joke with people and I say it's the real big C word, because it just takes so much of our lives. Communication can either bring us closer together or drive us further apart. It can make us feel connected. It can help us feel less lonely. It can also make us real, real mad. So if you ever lived with somebody, right, like communication can go real sideways real quick. So let's talk a little bit about communication. So, communicate some quick basics on dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term. I think that's really important to talk about, especially because my background previously wasn't in long term memory care. And so when I came to Rakhma, I thought dementia was just a diagnosis. And I learned very quickly that it's not. It's actually an umbrella term that describes a cluster of specific diagnoses. And that cluster can usually consists of Alzheimer's, Lewy body, frontal temporal dementia, and of course, there's so many others, but it really does cluster all of those together for us. And the most important thing about dementia and understanding those basics is that it is a set of diseases and conditions characterized by a decline in memory, and that includes short term as well as long term memory creation, language, which is using, processing, and understanding language, problem solving. So, the skills to identify complex needs, outcomes from actions, or being able to understand all of the necessary steps. So, initiation, sequencing of events, and termination of events. So, if I want to take one step forward, my brain has to problem solve and think to itself, pick up your knee, shift your weight, right? All those steps that come in. And then finally, the last area is social skills. So many of the folks who are experiencing dementia or dementia related illnesses see a decline in typical social skills and behaviors. So things like formality or being polite or knowing when to make comments can really shift. And all of these are so deeply connected to communication on such a big, big level. And so that's why we want to take just a minute and go over this, because ultimately what happens in dementia is that the disease itself has such an impact on daily life and living, and particularly around the areas of communication. Of course, it's not the whole story to just say that there are problems. There are so many good things and so many aspects of life that are so wonderful still. But we really want to talk about how are these changes going to impact how you're communicating? So let's get to the heart of the definition. Dementia friendly. When we're talking about dementia friendly, whether it's communication or activity or an environment, whatever we're talking about, when we say dementia friendly, what that really means is we are taking into account and making adjustments based on the impacts and symptoms of dementia for folks. So, things that we know, it might take a person with dementia an average of 20 seconds to process what you've said and be able to form a response. That 20-second gap, we're going to actually do a practice run later of what that feels like. It feels like an eternity if you're not used to taking time in conversation. So when we engage in conversation with the residents of Rakhma, when we engage in conversation with our loved ones, it is so, so necessary to really design and account for and make adjustments to the impacts and symptoms on dementia so we can increase the overall joy and happy experiences when we're connecting with our loved ones. So now that we've got some of those basics down of just defining it together, I want to talk a little bit more about communication. And I particularly love this cartoon. For those of you, if you can see it, I'll describe for anyone on the phone. So it's two men standing together. One man who looks like a police officer, he has this very clear map in his mind with very specific directions. And the person who's clearly asking for directions, after about step 1.5, it all turns into a massive jumble. It's not a clean map. I really love this. I've used this image to talk about communication with so many groups of people because this cartoon really does highlight how we might think about a process versus what it might sound like to any other given person listening to our explanations. And I think it's particularly useful and connected for when we're having conversations with a person with dementia. When we get too complex, when we throw too much information, it ends up really looking like that thought bubble on the right. It becomes this big jumble very quickly, which can really increase frustration. And if we aren't using our dementia friendly communication skills and approaches, that frustration can easily escalate and really impact the quality of both of your days. And so let's review some real basic communication and memory, recollection, and how dementia is impacting all of that. So, if any of you have heard the bookshelf analogy, you can probably just take 3 minutes and consider whatever life choices you've made while I explain the bookshelf analogy to everyone who hasn't heard it. So, the bookshelf analogy is a really great tool for understanding how dementia is really impacting our brain. And this is going to connect very directly to how we have activities and communication with folks living with dementia. So this is a really great tool and resource from the Alzheimer's Society. If you want to see the exercise done by somebody else, you can Google it. There's so many versions of this video available. So when you're thinking about the brain, I want you to think about it like this bookshelf. On the very bottom shelf are the emotions, skills, and memories from the earliest years of our lives. So, from when our cognitive memory starts into those early years. And what we know about books on the bottom of a bookshelf is they're usually big, sturdy, heavy. They kind of weight the whole thing down, right? It's exactly what's happening for our brains. That's where we're storing our deepest, most long term memories that we will hold on to for the majority of our lives. The next bookshelf up is the facts, skills, and memories created in our early years. So think like teenage years, right around there. So again, pretty heavy books, pretty weighted, right? We don't want to put the real tiny ones here, but we hold everything here. And we are able to hold on to this for a very long time in our long term memory. Then we have our early to middle age. So, again, those facts, skills, memories, emotions, experiences, people, all of it. All of that early to middle age comes next. Then we have late to middle age. So, any new skills you have learned in your late to middle age. And boy, I don't know about you, but I sure hope to be continuing to learn facts, skills, and building beautiful memories in my late to middle age. And then on that top shelf, we have short term and our most recent memories. So, when someone is diagnosed with dementia or one of the types of dementia, this is where we start to see changes in our bookshelves. And some changes in our bookshelves are natural over the life course, but dementia functions like someone rocking the bookshelf back and forth. So, when you start to rock that bookshelf back and forth, books start falling off. And they usually fall off from the top shelves first because that's where they're least sturdy. And someone early in the experience of dementia is often able to look at the books on the floor and say, oh gosh, these are all out of order. I need to put these back. What happened here? And they put their books back. As someone progresses and follows along on that journey, more books start falling off more frequently. They're less able to put those books back. And so, recall of facts, skills, memories, emotions, experiences, people, that recall starts to slowly work backwards. And throughout the experience of dementia, we work our way backwards to our bottom bookshelf, those deepest emotions, skills, and memories from our earliest age. And so when we're thinking about how we're engaging in communication and we're thinking about how to build activities, this analogy is so important to keep thinking. So we might want to have conversation about short-term and recent memories, things that are happening in the news, things that just happen with the grandkids or happen with a sibling or happen with parents, right? But it's really important to understand they might not have those books on that bookshelf anymore. They might be living a little bit closer to late to middle age or early to middle age. And so we want to engage in any kind of communication and activities that really meet this need and really understand this concept. So, a little bit more on communication because I don't think we can ever have enough conversation about it. Communication is broken down into three major types. And we use these types of communication all day, every day. And because all three of them become so important, that's why we're going to take time to really break them apart. So, first we have verbal communication, spoken words, sounds, volume, inflection, all of the stuff that goes into spoken word. So, whenever we're using sounds and words to express ourselves, the way we use that sound truly matters. So, when you're thinking about it, about volume and inflection, let's take the example if I said, I'm happy to see you. Does that sound very happy to see you? Probably not. That sound, that tone, that inflection really, really matters. So when we add volume and inflection, we can change I'm really happy to see you to I'm really happy to see you. That sound, that tone, that inflection becomes increasingly important uh, as someone is moving through dementia. So folks start to understand that verbal less, but they still understand the sound, the tone, the volume, and the inflection you're using. So they might not catch all the words, but they catch the meaning of the words from our verbal language. The next type of communication is nonverbal. So this is really describing all of the gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice, eye contact or lack of eye contact, body language, posture, and all the other millions of ways that people can communicate without using verbal communication. So let's just use the I'm happy to see you example one more time. How does the meaning of the words, I'm happy to see you, change if I'm looking away from you? I don't even look away from my computer. I don't smile. I don't make eye contact. And when I do finally look up, I have a big frown on my face. That kind of nonverbal really truly impacts the quality of the verbal. And as dementia continues progressing in someone, we start to see more and more folks will rely on nonverbal communication cues. And so, for you in particular, as a loved one and a family member, you're going to want to start thinking through how can you use less verbal cueing and more nonverbal cueing. And when you're thinking about the moments of connection with your loved one, what is your body doing? What is your face doing as you're speaking words? So you might be saying something really happy and pleasant, but if your body language, your nonverbal communication is telling somebody something different, they're going to rely more and more on that as they lose the ability to understand spoken language. So the last type of communication is visual. So visual communication is transferring knowledge, information, and meaning using eyesight and symbols. So some really easy examples that you can think of every day are signs, maps, color coding, images. Particularly with signs, if I asked you to think of what is a red octagon, what does that mean? Hopefully your first thought was, that's a stop sign, John Anna. And I would say you are absolutely correct. That is the use of visual communication. Even if I took the white word stop off, most folks who grew up in the US would know that that requires them to stop at an intersection. So that's an easy way to see how visual communication is really important and is one of the main ways that we can really communicate quite a bit without having to use verbal language. So, an easy example is if I held up two shirts, so different shirts, one in either hand, and I didn't say a single word, I didn't do anything with my body language, I just held up two shirts. What am I communicating to you? Am I asking you to make a choice? Probably. And you're probably going to tell me that I look great in green, so I should definitely go with the green shirt for sure. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree with you. It's use of nonverbal and visual communication that we really want to think about when we're engaging with our loved ones because dementia really does change the ability to process and understand that verbal language. So I would challenge each and every one of you listening in the next couple of days, really make an effort to start practicing the use of nonverbal and visual communication. That way, when you get to time with your resident, you are already slightly more skilled at being able to use your nonverbals and your visual communication to increase the success of that communication. And that really, to me, is the last point on this slide. You are the one who controls success. As a person who is neurotypical or assumingly neurotypical, as someone who is not experiencing the brain changes connected to dementia, you are the most important aspect of your communication foundation. You control the success every time. And I think the other thing that really comes, and I think we see this in every part of our lives, is communication can either really harm or help someone. And so, with you being in the control seat, you get to choose whatever path you take. So, if you remain adaptive, open, willing to try a new approach if something isn't working, you are going to more consistently find success rather than harm. And the most important lesson that I can ever impart on you in this regard is someone might not remember, your loved one might not remember what you did an hour ago with them. They might not remember the shopping trip you took them on. They might not remember the show you watched together. What they will always be able to hold on to, though, is how they felt when they were with you. And so if you work toward that communication, if you remain adaptive, open, flexible, trying different things, using your visual and your nonverbals more frequently, they're going to remember that they felt connected, loved, and happy with you. So please, 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 and if ever there's a moment that you're feeling frustration, just take a moment to take a breath. Remember that we get to harm or help, and we control communication success as a whole. So let's keep moving. Let's talk about some very specific tips for dementia-friendly communication. So really taking into account what dementia does and how we can respond as folks who aren't experiencing it. One of the most important things we can do is to greet, introduce, and use compliments. So one of the most important things when you're starting any communication is to take the time to introduce who you are. To say, "Hi, John Anna, it's so nice to see you. I'm Joy." That's my middle name. Let's just go with it. "Hi, John Anna, it's so nice to see you. I'm Joy. I'm so excited to be here with you today." When you greet and introduce both the person and yourself by name, you're not asking them to come up with information. So when we start to use this is called complementary communication. When we start to really engage less in questions of, "Hey, how are you? What's going on? What did you do today? What did you have for breakfast? Who did you talk to last week?" Right? All those questions, which can really increase frustration for someone experiencing dementia where they can't find the book on that shelf to tell you. When we just say, "Hey, I'm John Anna. It's so nice to see you. I can't wait to spend our day together." That immediately creates a set of feelings that are positive, hopeful, and helpful, right? If we start our conversation with, "Hey, mom, how are you doing? What did you eat? Have you been out today?" Right? That series of questions that we usually ask to get to know what happened in someone's day, that is confrontational in nature and can really increase frustration. And that starts you off on a tough foot. So, really, really, really start here by just greet, introduce, and use a couple of compliments. All that joy that you feel when you see your loved one, tell them that joy and don't hold back. Because I don't know about you, but anytime someone's just like, "You look amazing today. It's so good to see you." I might be having a terrible day and feel like I look terrible, but just hearing those kind words really changes that moment and usually changes the rest of my day in a positive way. So we talked about this previously, the wait 20 seconds. So when we are talking with a person who has dementia, research has demonstrated that it takes up to an average of 20 full seconds for that person to hear you, process what you've said, and be able to give you a response. And I said this earlier, but truly, waiting 20 seconds feels like a very long and uncomfortable pause, especially if you're from the North. Um, I used to trade nationally, and whenever I'd go to Southern states, they'd always tell me that I needed to slow down, I need to talk less fast. So 20 seconds feels like a lifetime when you're already a fast talker. But what you're doing when you wait is providing an incredible and valuable resource to your loved one. Time and patience are really the foundations to communication success here. So I have a stopwatch up. I'm going to ask the question, "How are you?" And then we're going to wait 20 seconds together in dead silence. It's going to feel kind of weird, but I just want to practice with you. What does 20 seconds of silence feel like? So ready? "Hey, everyone. How are you?" I see some of you in your, oh, I just broke it. I'm so sorry. See, I already couldn't do 20 seconds. Okay, we're going to try again. "Hey, everybody, how are you?" And that is 20 seconds of silence. So again, I felt antsy the whole time. I still do, even as I work with our beautiful residents on the regular, right? I still have those moments of like, just be patient, just give it time. So really start practicing that 20 seconds. If you're going to practice that 20 seconds with people who don't really need that 20 seconds, give them a heads up. It's just nice. Otherwise, it feels very confusing. I started trying it out with some of my friends after I learned this, and I didn't warn them ahead of time. So I would just wait for 20 seconds, and they didn't understand why. So just a hot tip, make sure to tell other people that you're waiting. So a big thing that is really important, especially when working with and loving someone who has dementia, is that any kind of behavior, good and frustrating, it's always communication. So let's think about when we describe behaviors as something that's frustrating or upsetting or you don't like it. Whenever those behaviors show up, so even if it's just withdrawal, so it might be getting louder, it might be repeating yourself, it might be heightened emotion, um, it might be just drawing absolutely silent, no matter what. All of those actions and behaviors, it truly is a form of communication because dementia frequently takes away the ability to form complex explanations, sentences, and then eventually to find words at all. So disruption in communication is normal. And anytime those behaviors start to show, if someone is changing how they're behaving when you're talking to them, take it as a form of communication and really become a detective. So we have plenty of judges in the world. We need less judging and more detective work here. So rather than saying, oh, they're doing that thing and it's on purpose and it's so frustrating, which can happen, right? Not any of us, of course, other people, right? Those moments, instead of being frustrated, take that moment to say, hey, something's happening. What's happening? Work with staff members, work with your person, and figure out what is it they're trying to tell you. And then take action. So we talked a little bit about this, but really adapting and responding. So as we work with folks who have dementia and as people without dementia, it's really our job to be the ones who are going to adapt to meet our residents' needs and communication abilities. So again, we talked a little bit about this, but it might be more of using visual cues rather than your verbal cues that you're used to. It might be willing to listen to the same story over and over and over, or being willing to talk to someone who can't necessarily provide verbal or nonverbal responses back. Our goal is always to adapt because there is always an amazing human being in there who is listening, who's paying attention, who's experiencing sensory perception, who's still part of the world. And so we have to figure out, what does that look like? If your person and loved one no longer has the ability to form verbal or nonverbal responses, just watching their favorite movie together and chit-chatting at them the whole time in a pleasant tone of voice of like, oh my gosh, did you see that? I can't believe he's the murderer. He's the love interest. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that kind of chit-chat, even when they're not responding, is still building something together. It's still creating that moment of joy. It's still creating that deep connection. The other piece with the adaptation is really learning how to respond. And so our goal should always be to respond rather than react to somebody. And so responding means we've taken that moment, we've assessed what's happening, and we've calmly chosen a path of what to do next. This is very different than reacting, which can be really reflexive, quick, and usually it's not. I don't know about you, but my reactions are rarely as helpful as my responses. So really take that moment, figure out if something's happening, say, what's going on here? Take that moment and figure out your response. Redirect as needed. Redirection is really about knowing the person. And as the family, friends, and loved ones of our residents, you know them better than we probably ever will because you've had them in their lives. You've been a part of their lives for a lot longer than we have. So really knowing that person, what matters to them, and that's where redirection becomes about engaging a person's interests, the things they love, to move them out of a difficult moment. We only redirect a person after we've taken time to adapt and respond, or if there's a potential safety issue. So let's say you're visiting your loved one and they might get stuck on asking where somebody is, and that person might not be alive anymore. That would be a great moment of redirection to say, hey, tell me, who's John? Tell me about John. I would love to know more about John. And that's just shifting from a moment of distress to a moment of connection and excitement, right? Because if they're asking for John, they clearly have some sense of who John is that day. So just engage with it. And if someone is stuck in a difficult moment and that particular topic isn't working, use something else that they love. Talk about something else that they love. So for me, I was an art history major in college among my 3 total majors because I'm that person. Um, I love art history. So if ever you need to distract me, just ask me my feelings about contemporary art, and I will immediately have a very long, like 10-minute spiel to give you on how I don't know that I fully understand modern art. So that's a great example of redirection. And then finally, the last one is compassion and validation. Whenever we're interacting with a loved one who has dementia, we have to be compassionate and we have to validate their reality. Dementia is a disease of the brain, and it is a form of organ failure. That's just the reality. And that means we will never live in the same reality as the person that we love. Their timelines are going to be different than ours. Their reality is going to be different. So, again, that person may not remember what you said. They may not know what year it is. They may not know what activities you did together last week, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And so rather than fighting with someone and saying, no, 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 mom, it's 2020, like the president, that's Ronald Reagan's not our president. That kind of fighting doesn't do us any good. If we can just say, you betcha, Reagan, he president for sure, right? That is one of our greatest tools, is just providing that compassion and validation, because the confrontation of trying to correct actually increases stress and distress for your loved one. Okay, so now that we've got some of that, let's talk about memory enhanced activities. So let's get into what memory enhanced means, as well as some actual strategies for memory enhanced activities together. So, what is memory enhanced? Memory enhanced is designed with the ultimate goal to help a person connect to positive memories, relationships, feelings, and experiences in their lives. That's the shorthand. What this really means is that any activity, any intervention, any kind of response, we're really trying to get them to connect to that inner world. Memory enhanced really matters because a person living with dementia struggles to self generate those connections. And as a loved one and as staff members of Rakhma, it's our job to help them reconnect. So let me give you an example. I want you to think for a moment and recall the hair color of your very first teacher. And if that is too long ago and you're like, John Anna, I cannot remember that right now, that's okay. I want you to recall the scent of your favorite flower. Really get a good picture in your mind. Okay. Do you have a good picture in your mind of the scent of your favorite flower or the hair color of your teacher? If you do, it's probably because I asked you about it. You might not have thought about that unless I had given you a prompt, right? I created that opportunity for you to connect to that memory and experience. That's a memory enhanced question. It's a really specific thing that is asking you to engage in that recollection process. So, if you find yourself unsure or stuck, remember your job is to prompt connection to that inner world. Remember to focus on creating opportunities for joy. So, if you know that person in and out because you've been in their life for a very long time and you know they absolutely love English toffee, get them talking about English toffee. Just talk about it yourself if they can't respond and say, I've been thinking of trying to learn how to make English toffee, because you know that they love that thing. It's going to prompt connection. It's going to prompt memory. It's going to prompt happy feelings. And that really is our goal, right? With memory enhanced, that's always our goal, is through finding those moments to create that deeper connection to memory, we can help create feelings of comfort, joy, and happiness for someone who can't necessarily self-prompt those memories anymore. So, when we're talking about memory enhanced activities, what we're really talking about is making that connection and prompting that joy. So, how do you do that? Great question, everybody. I got you. Don't worry. back to our 20 seconds. So I bring this up twice because I think it's that important. And if you know me as a trainer, I do not repeat myself that often, especially for hard content. So I'm bringing it back a second time because I really, really want this to be just a regular part of your world. Give that good long pause. Give that opportunity to hear, process, and respond. Give that patience because it's really, truly critical. And if you wait that like 15, 20 seconds and you're not seeing any response, that's when it's okay to try again. But we really, really want to focus in on one thing at a time, one communication at a time, which connects to simplifying. So that's our next general rule for memory enhanced activity engagement. When we've discussed, so we discussed a little bit about initiation, sequence, and termination, those processes that the brain has to go through for everything we do. So if right now you're thinking of picking up a pencil or eating a snack, your brain has already worked through initiation. So how would you start that process? Sequencing, what are the steps involved in that process? And termination, how do you end that process? So how do you end eating? You put food down, like you stop chewing, you put your spoon down, right? So when we're thinking through that process, it's essential that you simplify any instructions, steps, or activities themselves. So an easy way to understand this is through talking about shirts. So if I asked you to change your shirt, do you know what that means? Good chance you probably do. You probably just mentally ran through what that meant and all the steps involved of like having to, like, what does it mean to change your shirt? And you probably didn't need to name every single one. For someone who's living with dementia, that's not the case. They can't run through that entire process. They may not be able to initiate, they may not be able to sequence, or they might not be able to terminate the process. So we want to break down any sort of instructions into one or two-step commands. So rather than saying, hey, let's go change your shirt, say, hey, let's walk to the bedroom down the hall first. So really breaking that down, getting them to come with you, making it a simple, clear command that doesn't involve a lot of extra steps. Then when you get to the bedroom, say, hey, let's have you sit down. We're going to change out shirts, right? Then you pick out your shirts. Then as you're helping someone, you're going to really, really simplify your instructions of, I'm going to pull on your right sleeve. I need you to pull your right arm back. That's a one-step instruction. Just pull your right arm back. It's got to be that simple because it reduces frustration. Instead of giving general statements, that step-by-step instruction really gives that opportunity for positive connection, because when someone can meet what you're requesting and they understand the request, they feel good about themselves. Like any average human being, if you're able to meet a request, you feel good that you were able to do it. If you don't understand a request or you don't know how to do that thing, it's going to feel really frustrating. So if you're thinking of an activity with your loved one, simplify, simplify, simplify. The next big thing is when you're doing activities, remember, it always goes in the order of cueing. Give a visual cue, a verbal cue, and then a touch-based cue. So what that means is you first and foremost always need to make visual contact first. You can do that by using the person's name, by getting on the same level. So if they're sitting, you should be sitting too, right? Really connecting and making sure that they see you, they see what you're doing. Because dementia really changes someone's visual patterns. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That range of vision gets smaller over time. So we want to make sure first that people see us. Then we want to use our verbal cues or commands. And it is only after we have done visual and verbal that we ever want to touch our loved one or their adaptive equipment like wheelchairs, walkers, right? Because when we go through that slowed down process of visual, verbal, physical, it reduces any scare or sensory overload. So what can happen is in some types of dementia, a person loses the ability to experience the senses, so they don't feel you touching them until all of a sudden you're touching them really hard. And then it might feel like a hit. So then they think you've hit them because you didn't give visual, verbal, and then touch-based cues. Or if someone walks up behind you and just pushes your chair, it's a terrifying experience on a good day. That's why we want to make visual, verbal, and then that touch-based cue of, hey, hi, so nice to see you. I'm going to move your chair. We're going to move forward, right? So are you ready? And then moving the chair together. Tactile and sensory. So any activities that we build whenever we can, we really want to make sure that people can engage in activities that require both action and reaction. And we want to create those opportunities to dig into something and participate, because really every person wants to participate for the most part in life, right? Of course, there's always a sourpuss or two, but then we just got to find what brings them joy. So maybe it's not that activity, it's a different one. So when you're thinking about digging in and participating, it can be through the use of any of the 5 senses. So sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. Generally, you want to avoid really passive activities like watching TV or movies, unless it's like one of their favorites and you're going to chit chat and connect. We really want to make sure that we are engaging the need to do stuff with your hands, because that need never leaves us. So we want to make sure that the activity gives that opportunity. The other thing to be really aware of with TV is dementia reduces the ability to distinguish between reality, so what's actually happening in the real world, and moving imagery. So if someone is watching a crime show, so let's say one of my loved ones, I'm working with them, I leave on like CSI Miami or something like that. What might happen for that person is all of a sudden they've now just witnessed a murder in their living room. The investigation is happening right in front of them. They don't know what to do or how to help. It's not a TV show, it's really happening. So we really want to be careful anytime we are going to use TV or connect with someone watching a show together. We really want to make sure that we're very conscientious of, if this were happening in real life in front of this person, would it be distressing? If the answer is potentially yes, find a different thing to watch together. And again, we really want to make sure we're connecting with the whole person. So really engaging in action and reaction wherever we can. And then finally, older is better, y'all. Older is better. Whenever we're building activities, programs, connections, conversations, it doesn't matter. Older really is better. So going back to that bookshelf analogy, we might not have the top 3 bookshelves anymore with our loved one that we are spending time with. However, they do still remember things from the earlier years. No matter what their age is, no matter what their age, there's something that they probably remember from earlier times. So really focus in on that. So if you're going to bring in photographs of people that they love, don't bring in ones you just took last week at the family reunion. They won't recognize many of those people, probably. So bring in older photographs. Seriously, bring in older photographs. People love looking through their and connecting to those memories, even if it feels like it's happening right now for them. So same goes with books, movies, shows, any kind of material. We really want to make sure that older is more frequently our choice, because older is better in this case. Okay, so now let's talk about the 4 types of engagement need. And we're just going to do a real quick breezy breezy overview of this. And then we're going to talk about some examples of things you can do. And then there's going to be time right at so right around 7 we'll end with the education portion. And then we're going to I'm going to be on the line for at least 30 minutes to do any answers and conversation that you want to have with me. So just so you know what's coming up. Okay, so 4 types of engagement that is needed in every human's life. So first, there's intellectual. So intellectual engagement is just one of those dimensions of health and well-being. And so when we're talking about intellectual, we're talking about activities that have the primary goal of intellectual stimulation. The focus of intellectual work is to really ask the brain to do some kind of work. So intellectual stimulation encourages problem solving, creativity, imagination, or the use of skill sets that are not frequently used. So I happen to know how to crochet. It's not my go-to hobby anymore, but like I could pick it right back up if I needed to. And if you asked me to crochet for you, that for me would be an intellectual engagement, because I would have to recall how to do, like how to drop a stitch, add a stitch, do a double, right? Like do double versus single. I would have to remember all of that. So whenever we're thinking about intellectual, really think problem solving, creativity, imagination, or skill set. The next type is social. So social activities have that primary goal of social stimulation. So focusing on relationships, connections, and being part of a community. Community can mean anything. It can mean family networks, friend groups, religious groups that that person is a part of, or even just the housemates they have at Rakhma. That's all part of connection and community. Social activities encourage individuals to build or strengthen relationships to the people around them and the people that they love and care about. Then there's emotional. So, when we choose activities with the primary goal of emotional stimulation, our task is to prompt connection to a person's internal world of emotion and experience. So, very similar to what we've already talked about. But emotionally focused activities should bring out happiness, joy, excitement, or spending quality time together. We really got to focus on the good emotions here, my friends. And when we're doing that engagement of happiness, joy, excitement, and spending that quality time, we really want to be connecting to that person's feelings, the values that they've held in life and still hold, and their deepest belief systems. That's such an important part of emotion is what is their most core value in life? What is their deepest belief and how can we connect there? We typically place any kind of spiritual activities primarily into emotional, could be social, could be intellectual, depending on what it is. And then last but certainly not least, we have physical. So these activities are usually the easy ones to identify because it only has a goal of movement and connection to the body. Physical stimulation asks people to use their hands, their feet, their core, their trunk, anything, any kind of movement that is really getting the body going in any way. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about physical. So let's go over a couple examples from each of the four categories to give you some ideas of what you might want to do with your loved one next time you see them. So let's talk about intellectual. You can discuss travel with your loved one. Take your resident on a tour. Bring in pictures, either of places they've traveled or places you've traveled, and take them on that tour. Talk through what you really loved about your trip. Open the conversation and say, I really love travel. Tell me more about where you've traveled. I actually used that strategy with one of our residents at the Grace House, and I ended up in the coolest 30-minute conversation while I started playing pool because originally we discussed playing pool. But I ended up playing pool by myself, but having an amazing conversation where I got to learn all about the travels that he had taken in life. So, talk about travel. Read books together. Read books, read poems, read the newspaper if your loved one was real into the newspaper, whatever it is. Have them read to you, you read to them, engage in conversation about the books or poems that they've loved. It's so critical to create that moment of joy, connection, and engagement by just engaging in the act of reading. You can, of course, watch films or shows. Please, please, please talk about them. Make it active engagement, even though it's a passive intellectual activity. When we engage in that conversation, we can make it a more active intellectual activity. Of course, crafting is a great option. Make sure that person likes crafts, wants to do crafts. Don't make people do crafts they don't want to. I feel very strongly on that. Um, so make sure that you're finding a craft that is really able to be broken down into simple steps and really able to, oh, I see someone has to go. Oh, thank you so much for coming. Um, and then the last one is talk about sports. You don't have to play sport. You can just talk about sports. Talk about their favorite team. Talk about a sport that you love. Talk about facts that you both shared. If you both had amazing baseball card collections, talk about that for a while. Um, and I see someone says, when first meeting, how about asking, how are you doing? How are you feeling? To get a feeling of where they are in that moment. That's a really great question, Gordon. Thank you so much for asking that. It's really important that we focus on compliments than more on the question, because what can happen is if your nonverbals are looking kind of negative and you're shaking your head as you're asking a question, your loved one is going to read your nonverbals and your visual communication more than the actual words you're saying. So they might say, I'm doing bad. And they're not actually doing bad, right? But because they're looking for those cues, because dementia is impacting that process, you really want to start with, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. I'm so happy to be here. Tell me about fill in the blank. You can throw in a nice, good general thing. Tell me about. And then whatever they're able to grab onto, whatever they can hold on to. Yep. Oh, and I see Gordon is responding back. Yep. In times of phone, COVID has really produced a lot of challenges. I would really encourage, whenever you can, do more talking. Talk about things that that person loves, really bringing that back in. So rather than focusing so much on the present, start focusing on what you know they enjoy, or past memories they want to talk about, stories that they've told a million times that you know they love. Be like, oh my gosh, the other day I was in West Virginia. And then that person can be like, did I ever tell you I grew up in West Virginia? And you can be like, oh my gosh, tell me about that. And then you've created that really positive connection. You might already know all the information about West Virginia and be thinking, sweet Pete, we've already had this conversation. But what's most important is you're creating that positive feeling, and you're spending that time together, even if it's on the phone, even if it's not quite what you want. So, Gordon, that's a great question. I hope I covered some of that. I'm going to keep us moving just to make sure we're still on time. But again, we're coming back for questions, so don't you worry. If you have questions, you hold on to them. We're coming back. So for emotional, you might want to listen to music together. So choose music that has deep meaning. Talk about what you like, engage in the memories it brings up. You can play music. So someone said that they loved singing at the very beginning. Play music, sing with people, sing things that they know. Older is better, remember. There are so many museum tours that are currently available online. So if you can, do that connection and do the museum tour together. Talk about what you like. Talk about what's interesting to them. Really engaging, especially if they did a lot of travel or they traveled to very specific museums. See if that museum is offering the virtual tours right now, so you can create that moment of joy and connection to those memories. Bring in your old photo albums. Seriously, bring in your old photo albums. Let people just let your loved one kind of just walk through it, and whatever's coming up for them, just chat with them about it. And remember, older photos are better. They may not recognize, they might feel really frustrated with newer photos. So focus on what you know that they can connect to. And then, of course, old hobbies. So bringing in items from their old hobbies. And it's really important, if they had an old hobby, don't change the smell, the look, don't wash it, don't clean it. Like, they're going to remember that stinky old softball glove. And so if you bring in a softball glove that you cleaned, even if it was theirs, and it doesn't smell like them, it doesn't smell like they remember, it's not going to trigger the memories that they had. It's not going to connect. So if you've got older stuff of your loved ones, please don't clean it, change it, do anything to it. Bring it in the state that they will most remember to create that joy and connection. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of apps like House of Memory. There's a whole bunch out there. So look into the apps out there, because there's quite a few that can connect to those memories. Okay, we're going to breeze through social and physical, and then we're going to get to question time. So talking about games, puzzles, again, make sure they're very simple and straightforward. Puzzles can be as simple as printing a picture of their favorite flower on plain paper, cutting it into like 7 pieces, and then hanging out together and putting that quote unquote puzzle together as you talk about the flowers that they love, or you talk about the flowers you're planting in your garden this spring, whatever that looks like. So games and puzzles, of course, hobbies, always bringing back hobbies, arts and crafts. We talked a little bit about that, but with this is the social category. So your goal should be that connection to other people. So less on skill building, much more focused on how am I connecting. Doing any kind of spiritual groups, so bringing folks to spiritual groups, especially once COVID we are allowed to come back in and out of the house more regularly. But bringing a spiritual group too. If that person that you love was part of a church group, get a couple people together from the church group and give a call and say, oh my gosh, it's Nancy and Bill and whoever else, right? So make it that social connection. Do a group movie or show night. So get a couple folks together and watch the movie together. So really focusing on the experience of being in social community. And then finally, the great unifier, make and share food together in that communal social setting together to really build it. Okay, so for physical, dance parties. I know it's going to sound like some folks may be like, are you kidding me? Like, they cannot even get up out of the chair. That's okay. Do a chair dance party. Get them moving their toes, get them moving their fingers, snapping together, clapping together. That any kind of movement like that is physical in nature. It actually increases heart rate, increases range of motion, and helps keep more physical movement. So it doesn't have to be get up and hold a swing dance party. It can seriously be sitting in your chair, humming along and tapping and clapping together. Of course, go for a walk, enjoy the outdoors together, go sit on a porch and talk about the weather. Um, Assist with any kind of project. So have your loved one come help you with projects. So be like, hey, I'm planting some flowers, come with me. Aromatherapy is a big one. If you know that they had particular scents, like you can get me to do basically anything if you promise me the scent of fresh lilacs. And that is such a short season, people. So if you can promise me the smell of fresh lilac, I will follow you anywhere. And then finally, pets. So either bringing in pictures of beloved pets, having them pet dogs, pet cats, right? Like any kind of movement, any kind of exhilaration, getting the body up and going. And that really is connecting to the physical. So it's not just exercise. It can really be about the senses. Oop, I see some questions came in. Your background, would you be, we are recording everything. I'm going to send out the recording afterward. I'm also going to be sending everybody some additional resources that you can look into so you don't have to dig for it. I'll send it for you. So the answer is yes, absolutely. Okay, so that's physical. Let's do a real quick review of today's topics. So today we talked about and gave examples around dementia communication, how dementia changes communication process. And the most important thing that we know is we must affirm, adapt, and respond. Using those visual, verbal, and touch-based cues with a lot of practice around using nonverbal and visual cueing. We defined memory enhanced. We also defined dementia friendly. We talked about the 4 areas of engagement that every human needs, so intellectual, emotional, physical, and social. And then we talked about some communication strategies for success. So we're right at 7:05. Thank you so much for hanging with me the extra 5 minutes. What I'm going to do now is take any discussion questions. So you can either go ahead and chat them in, or you may choose to unmute yourself. I'm going to continue the recording. If we get into territory that the recording should have ended, I'll just end it on the discussion in question. So I can change the recording. So if you need to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and use your control panel to unmute yourself and ask your question. Or again, feel free to chat it in. So I'll just pause. And I'm going to bring my video back for everybody so you can see me, because now I'm not just quiet like reading. Okay. Hello, I'm back. Hi, everyone. Does anyone have any questions? Ooh, is that Gordon? Here, I can unmute you, Gordon.
You have to do that.
Okay. Oh, Gordon, I got you. What's up, Gordon? What's your question?
Well, I'm just saying, is this kind of what you go through with new staff?
Yes, actually, this was, so we had a much longer and more in-depth version. This was actually the staff training that we just completed for the month of May. Yep, I know what time it is for sure, what month it is. Yes, we just completed this for May. This is also information that I have incorporated into our new staff orientation training.
Okay, and do you spend some time observing?
Ooh, that's a great question. So we spend a lot of time practicing.
Yeah.
Because especially with new employees, I don't want to bring new employees onto the floor if they don't have the skills and haven't been like gone through all the parts yet. So we spend a lot of time doing practice together. Especially because if you look at the science of how adults learn, they actually retain the most information by having that practice.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just such a key part of education. We have to build skills as well as building knowledge.
Tell us something about your background.
Ooh, professional, I guess professional or personal.
Both.
Cool, okay.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the North Woods of Wisconsin. I grew up in a very small area called the Harrison Hills. It is near it's south of Rhinelander, if anybody knows where that is. Home of the Hodag. So I grew up in the woods. I still love the woods. I currently live in the city, but that I don't know if I'm always going to live in the city. I love the woods so much. And then professionally, in my last job, I was a national project director of over $2 million worth of funding from the government, both state and federal. So it was an amazing job and I loved it, but oh gosh, I was so ready to be done. I was doing national travel at minimum one time a month. Sometimes it was 2 to 3 times a month. So I'd be gone from home for 3 weeks at a time. So I'm so thrilled to be at Rakhma. I'm so thrilled to be part of this team and I'm so thrilled to be doing a lot of really good change work. So those are things about me and my background, I think. Thanks for asking, Gordon. I see someone just chatted in a question. Communication. So the question is, any suggestions for communicating with mom since she has no language and we only communicate on the phone? All I get is dead air. Oh my goodness. Of course. Thank you so much for that question. Particularly right now with COVID happening, that can be a really, really big challenge, especially when it's that phone. So there's a couple of things that Rakhma has been exploring. So we've been looking at short videos. So where you can record a video of you talking to your loved one that we can play at any time to be able to connect. Oh gosh, Heart Legacy, I want to say is the name of the company. I haven't been yet pulled in for the training portion of that, so I'm not fully in on the groundwork there. But I think the other thing that can really happen is that you can talk about things that you know that she'll want to talk about. So even when she doesn't have that language, being able to chit chat about a cousin, a brother, a loved one, a grandchild, talking with joy, excitement, and enthusiasm, because the most important thing in that communication is you might not be getting as much out of it, but you're creating that moment of joy, connection, and like feeling part of something for your mom. So if you can like hold on to that part in particular, especially through just phone communication right now, it's so, so tough. I know that all the houses are working very extensively on, oh, Marcia just chatted. Marcia, thank you for having my back. I was just about to get there. Marcia Anderson, who is volunteer and fund donate. Oh gosh, Marcia, I should know your title. I'm so sorry. Marcia handles money and volunteers. That's what I know for sure. Development. Thank you so much for the word, Marcia. Skype and Zoom are always options. So even if it's not just the telephone, we have a company Zoom account. That's how we're doing this tonight. Absolutely connect via Zoom, show pictures, right? Even if there's not that back
Let
and
me
forth.
let me interrupt you just a minute, Johanna.
Yes.
Mom also has macular degeneration, so I really can't show her
Mm.
anything visual. So when I do call her, what I'm questioning is if I say something and then wait 20 seconds on the phone, okay, that'll be strange to me, but I'm willing to try that. But so are you saying I really should be talking to her about things when she was a child?
Mm-hmm. So only if you know, only if that's information you have, just thinking older is better. So if you can talk about when you were a kid, so rather than talking about when she was a kid, say, oh my gosh, do you remember when I was 5 and I fell down the well and Timmy was like Lassie went and got Timmy and Timmy saved me from the well, like whatever it is, right?
Okay.
Having that kind of conversation and bringing back what were happy moments together that you had when you were younger, right?
Okay. All right.
Bringing that back.
All right. Okay. We do a lot of singing and praying because figure that's stuff that she remembers. So, but
Absolutely.
but thank you. I want to thank you. This was a very helpful to me, and I have some quite a few new ideas, and I'm so anxious to see her again. So thanks for your talk. This has been
Yes.
wonderful.
Absolutely. Judy, thank you so much. And I see someone else has all chatted in that hard of sight, so visual is also not very helpful, right? So really, really relying on, and that's one of the things about dementia. People all the way up into the very end retain the music that they learned as children. So if that's church music or synagogue music, right? If that is music that they heard up on the farm, you can always fall back on singing Prayer is a great option if someone was spiritual or religious in their life. Even just chit-chatting about major events from long ago, right? Just bringing that stuff back, that would bring, again, generating happy memories. We really want to focus on joy and happiness and less on stress, which right now it's really easy to get so stressed out about what's happening. So those are great opportunities. Thank you, Judy, for sharing the singing and the praying. That's a really good suggestion for anybody else too. Anyone else have, does that answer your question, Judy? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh yeah, thank you, thank you.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any questions or things they want to talk about? And if I'm not the right person, I will absolutely refer you to the right Rakhma staff. So please know, I'll refer out. I know my roles in life, or at least I try to. So. Okay. I'm gonna just give it a second. If you don't have anything, can you give me a visual thumbs up if you're on the video? So that way I know to move on and we're done and we're not just hanging in dead silence. I got a couple. Ooh, we're missing one thumb up. Okay, so I'm gonna wait just a moment until we get that. Gordon, do you want me to unmute you? Would that be easier? I'm gonna unmute
Sure.
you.
I'm in the middle of typing, but that's fine. No, I had submitted a couple of questions to Brandon. I don't know whether you got a chance to see them. And now might not be the appropriate time.
Okay, so if they're to Brandon, I probably didn't see them because unfortunately I'm not Brandon. I think it's pretty fortunate. I'm very happy to not be an executive director. I love being a training manager.
That's what he told us to do, actually, was to send the questions to him.
Oh, perfect. So is it about this webinar? If so, I can probably answer the question if it's about this webinar.
No, it's about other things too.
Oh,
But
okay.
I'm
So
not sure.
then let's hang tight and have you connect with Brandon, and you can always send me, you can email me any questions you have or give me
Okay.
a call. I'm happy to answer offline.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, then I saw the rest of folks had thumbs up. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to wrap this up. So I want to really say thank you so much. It's a Wednesday. It's 7:15 on a Wednesday night. You could be doing a million other things and you chose to spend it here with us talking about communication and activities. And so I truly want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I think it's extraordinary. The love of guardians, family, and loved ones for the residents at Rakhma. You all have such a profound and extraordinary effect on your loved ones. And I'm lucky that I get to see it when I go to work. So thank you for being here. You can always call the office line, which I have listed at 612-824-2345. We do have a Facebook and an Instagram, and I know Marsha's working hard on getting those up and running and in use more often. Of course, please email me, jgans@rakhma.org. I'm up on the website if you can't remember, if you're like, what was her name? And just remember, it's Johnanna rhymes with banana. So you can always find me. And then you can go ahead and click on this link. This will also be sent out in the email after. It should work if you click on it, but it might not. So it's a very short feedback form on today's webinar, as well as what you want to see in future trainings, because we're going to start doing this more frequently with family and loved ones. So like, what do you want to hear me talk about with you, or hear one of our other amazing staff members talk about with you? That form, go ahead and submit as many ideas as you want. We're listening and we want the information. I had a question, how many people were on? We had 13 people live and 21 people registered for this one. And we really hustled to make this one happen. So this was a shorter time frame than I would normally give people for a training. But we just wanted to test run if this was something people wanted. And it seems like the answer is yes. So please feel free. Again, if you don't want to fill out the form and you just want to send me your feedback personally, you can email me, contact us. We're here and we're going to do good work with you. So thank you so much for being here on this balmy Wednesday evening. I hope you all have an amazing day. Please stay safe and healthy, and I look forward to connecting with you again really soon.
Thanks, Joanna.
Of course, goodbye, everyone.